Hi, and welcome to Tim's Old School Perspectives. Boy, it was an exciting day in the election front. Probably the biggest day we've had in a while now. For those of us who have not given up on Trump, this was a truly great day. A lot of good stuff going on. We'll talk about Pennsylvania, we'll talk about Nevada, and we'll talk about what's going on in Georgia, because all three of these states are moving right now. They had a long hearing in Pennsylvania today, and Rudy Giuliani was in rare form. Thankfully, he didn't have any hair dye malfunctions this time. He went up there and looked like a normal human being and went through about 3 hours of it. Witnesses all over the place. But let's hear from Rudy. Now, this is kind of a long clip, about 2 or 3 minutes, but stick with it. I tried to cut out all of the fat and leave just the meat.
We have calculated, and the evidence will show, that there were 682,770 mail-in ballots that were entered into your votes in just Allegheny County and in Philadelphia that were not observed by any single Republican. Those ballots could have all been for Joe Biden. They could have all been for someone else. They could have had no identifying data. They could have been from the same person. There could have been multiples of them. There could have been no name on them. We could ask, and you could subpoena, all of the outer envelopes. It'd be very interesting to take a look at the 682,770 outer envelopes. It'd be very interesting if they were kept. And it would be very interesting to see how many of them weren't filled out. We want to disqualify 682,000 votes so that 74 million people are not disenfranchised. Because that's what happened by the cheating that went on here. I'll give you one other enormously puzzling statistic. You sent out in the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 148 absentee or mail-in ballots. You received back 1.4 million approximately. However, in the count for president, you counted 2.5 million. I don't know what accounts for that 700,000 difference between the number of ballots you sent out and the number of ballots that ended up in the count. That number, 2,589,242, was on your government website until yesterday. And yesterday it was removed without explanation. And I can't imagine you could possibly certify without knowing the explanation to that, as well as the explanation to the 22,686 mail-in ballots that were returned on the day they were mailed. That's a trick. How about they were returned? How about 32,591 were returned the day after they were mailed? Another 20,000 were returned before they were mailed. Of course, I think this is a kind of a low count, and I guess the crooks in Philadelphia are disappointed in this. They only submitted 8,021 ballots from dead people, mail-in ballots for dead people. It's probably easier for dead people to submit mail-in ballots than it is to vote in person. You had about 30,000 of those. We're checking the records of the cemeteries around Philadelphia. Your election, because of these two counties and maybe one other, is a sham.
All right, so Rudy said that this election in Pennsylvania was a sham, and after those statistics, you'd have to say he was right. And so let's hear Dr. Turley talk a little bit about what happened after that, because the really big news is that a judge has blocked the certification of votes in Pennsylvania, which is huge.
As of today, a Pennsylvania judge just blocked the state from certifying your election results until her court holds hearings on the election on Friday the 27th.
Of course, MSNBC is desperately clinging to their lie that there's absolutely no fraud. But for any of you that happened to watch even part of that today, there was witness after witness, statistic after statistic, more evidence than you could possibly ever want in a trial. So it's really got to be getting tough for these guys just to bite their tongues.
And while Joe Biden looks forward, President Trump is pushing unsubstantiated claims of election fraud. The president's personal...
Let's hear a little bit of the end of President Trump's talk at the Pennsylvania Senate hearing today, and you'll get to see just how much these people are actually behind Trump. They're behind Giuliani, and they're fired up, and I believe big things could happen in Pennsylvania.
And I want to thank Rudy Giuliani for having the courage to do this, because there are other lawyers that backed down because they were being screamed at. This is going to be your crowning achievement because you're saving our country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
All right, so one of the senators from Pennsylvania asked Giuliani Ellis towards the end how many suits was there, and he wanted to know a little bit of particulars, and so I'll let you hear a little bit from Giuliani.
My question is on that legal review and on those legal process. Mr. Mayor, can you give us an indication of how many lawsuits are pending, where they're at in the various appellate processes? And second part to that, the allegations of the mail-in ballots, the 1.8 versus the 2.5 that came in, is that the substance of a lawsuit? Thank you.
This is Giuliani Ellis, and the mayor has asked me to answer this question. So as far as the campaign is concerned, we have pending lawsuits here in Pennsylvania. That's going up to the Third Circuit. They've granted an expedited review. We also have pending litigation in Nevada. We also have recounts in Georgia and Wisconsin, and we also have a pending lawsuit in Michigan. So regarding the mail-in specifically, we are still looking at all of the other legal options, and we are also planning on filing additional litigation by the end of this week. I won't go into detail on that other than to say that this is asking for a judicial remedy to this, and also I'll invite the question from the panel as well in terms of a remedy. Part of what we are asking, or what we did ask initially, was to stop certification so that we could get to the bottom of this process. Clearly, you've heard sufficient evidence today that would lead any reasonable finder of fact to say that there's been sufficient evidence that you should stop that, you should not move forward with certification. What we would ask the judiciary in terms of remedy can be legislative as well under the Constitution.
Okay, so Giuliani Ellis explains to us that it is the state legislature that holds this whole thing in their hand. Even if no judge came through, even if nothing else happened, if the Pennsylvania legislature decided that they were not going to seat electors or that they were going to seat electors for President Trump, they are within their constitutional right to do that. And Giuliani Ellis and Rudy Giuliani were both very careful to make sure that they understood this fact.
And I would direct your attention to Article 2, Section 1.2, which says that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. And so you, the legislature, without judicial oversight, can direct and take back that power.
Let's take a quick look at Nevada and what's going on there. I've got a little bit of a clip from Dr. Turley here that you can take a listen to.
But let's talk about the victory that the Trump legal team has had in Nevada. The Washington Examiner is reporting that a Nevada judge has agreed to let the Trump campaign present evidence of voter fraud and illegalities that plagued the state's election. And it is being reported that the fraud, this is coming again from the Washington Examiner, the fraud and illegalities are indeed enough to reverse Joe Biden's win and set an example for other states to follow.
So that's a court win in Nevada for President Trump. And that's what's important, to be able to have their day in court, because there is so much evidence that any reasonable judge that's not a total crook is going to make some sort of a move on this. And Nevada had a lot of fraud, plenty of election fraud there. Okay, Georgia is still in their third counting of the votes, and there is a couple of lawyers down there. Of course, the famous Sidney Powell is down there, and she's going to, in fact, she may have released the Kraken today, but she's filed her lawsuit either this evening or will very soon. And there's also another big lawyer for Trump down there, and these are actually being heard. So Georgia, after throwing out lots of cases, they're finally going to get to the point where they have to hear a case or two. Also, the statisticians are just piling up the facts of voter fraud in Georgia. The evidence down there is so overwhelming that at some point someone's going to listen down there. And Georgia may very well be a key to President Trump getting a second term. Okay, so that's all I have for you this evening. And it really is a lot. I could have made a 2-hour video out of this. I know nobody wants to hear that. And I want you to be able to get on to listening to other things. And I need to get on to back to researching. And you guys have a great day and a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll talk to you in a while.